Hello, Algebra 2 students. So today we are going to factor with the difference of squares and the sum of squares. Okay, so remember the difference of two squares looks something like a plus b times a minus b. If I distribute, a times a is a squared, a times negative b is negative ab, and then b times a is a positive ab, and finally b times negative b is negative b squared. What's going to happen is your two middle terms here, a negative ab and a positive ab, are going to cancel out, and you're left with a squared minus b squared. So again, a squared minus b squared would factor into a plus b times the quantity a minus b. So we're going to be factoring today. Like I said, part of our lesson is on the difference of two squares. So if I want to factor a squared minus 16, you want to think, does it look like thing 1 squared minus thing 2 squared? If so, it factors into thing 1 plus thing 2 times thing 1 minus thing 2. So going back to our problem here, a squared minus 16, think of this as a squared minus 16 is 4 squared. So does it look like thing 1 squared minus thing 2 squared? The answer is yes. So it's going to factor to thing 1 plus thing 2, so a plus 4 times thing 1 minus thing 2, a minus 4. Okay, and that's the way difference of two squares again is going to factor. So if we practice some more problems here, so this one is p squared minus 81. If I think about, can I think of this as thing 1 squared minus thing 2 squared? Well, yes, that's going to be p squared minus 9 squared. So this is going to factor into p plus 9 times p minus 9. If you look at the second one here, 8y squared minus 50. You got to think, can you factor something out of both terms? The answer is yes. We can factor out a 2, and we're left with 4y squared minus 25. So this part, again, is the difference of two squares. This is like saying 2y squared minus 5 squared. So again, I still have the 2 factor out of both terms here. So it's going to factor into 2 times 2y plus 5 times 2y minus 5. And it is okay to put 2y minus 5 first and 2y plus 5 second. That is fine. Okay, so continuing on here, in this next one, we can actually factor out a 9. Okay, so if we do that, if I take 9b squared and factor out a 9, we're left with, obviously, that's going to be b squared. And then 225 divided by 9 is 25. And again, this is like saying b squared minus 5 squared. Okay, so this will factor completely into b plus 5. Well, I forgot the 9 out in front here. B plus 5 and then b minus 5. Okay, if we do another one, we have 28k squared minus 7p squared. So we could factor 7 out of both terms, and we're left with 4k squared minus p squared. Again, this is the difference of two squares. This is the same thing as saying I have 2k quantity squared minus p squared. So again, this will factor, I've got the 7 out in front factored out, and then I have the 2k plus p, and then the 2k minus p. So again, our focus for this first part of the lesson has been the difference of two squares. Okay, next, we're going to take a look at perfect squares. Okay. So lesson 8-9 is again perfect squares. So if I would multiply a plus b quantity squared out, that would be like a plus b times a plus b. And again, if I distribute, we're going to have a squared plus ab plus another ab. B times a is still ab. And then plus b times b is b squared. If I combine these two middle terms, that's going to be 2ab. So again, I have a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. The same kind of thing works with the quantity a minus b quantity squared. So I'm going to take a minus b times a minus b. Again, if I distribute, a times a is a squared. A times negative b is negative ab. Negative b times a is again negative ab, and negative b times negative b is a positive b squared. So again, when I combine my two middle terms, so again I have a squared to start with, now I'm going to have minus 2ab and then plus b squared. So when we do this, if we're factoring perfect squares here, okay, m squared, is this like thing 1 squared? And my constant or my number at the end here, is this thing 2 squared? Yes. And is the middle 2 times thing 1 times thing 2? If so, then it's going to factor into thing 1 plus or minus thing 2 squared. Okay, so if I look at this example again, think about this as m squared, 9 is 3 squared. So if I take thing 1 times thing 2, m times 3 is 3m, and if I multiply it by 2, that's 6m, and again I get that in the middle. So since it's a minus in the middle, this is going to factor into m minus 3 quantity squared. And that's the way these go. Okay, so if I continue on here, so if I have x squared plus 8x plus 16, so think of 16 as 4 squared. So is my middle term, what's x times 4? It would be 4x. If I multiply it by 2, I get 8x. So this is going to factor into x plus 4 quantity squared. Okay, this next one here. So 9g squared is the same thing as taking the quantity 3g and squaring it. And then 4 is 2 squared. So if I multiply thing 1 times thing 2, 3g times 2 is 6g. And if I multiply that by 2, that gives me 12g. So since there's a minus in the middle, it's going to be 3g minus, and then 2, all quantity squared. Okay, continuing on here. This next one, 4t squared is the same thing as the quantity 2t squared. 81v squared is the same thing as the quantity 9v squared. So again, if I multiply these two together, 2t times 9v is 18tv. And again, if I double that, that gives me 36tv, which is what my middle term is. So this is going to factor into 2t, the middle term is plus, so plus 9v, again, quantity squared. Okay, if I look at the last one, so I'm thinking I could factor out a GCF in this one. I'm thinking we can factor an 8. So I'm left with c squared. Actually, no, my bad. We can't factor an 8. Let's try a 2. So we're going to have 4c squared minus 44c plus 242 divided by 2 is 121. So again, if I think about this, 4c squared, that's the same thing as the quantity 2c squared. And 121 is the same as 11 squared. So 2c times 11 is 22c. If I double that, I do get 44c. So this one is a perfect square. So here we go. We're going to have 2 times 2c. Since it's a minus in the middle, we're going to have minus 11 quantity squared. So again, the focus for today's lesson is on factoring perfect squares as well as factoring the difference of two squares. If you have any questions, please let me know.